Well, welcome everybody to the Starting Grid podcast. I'm here with Micah and Barry. My name's Chad, and what a great weekend of racing, guys, wasn't it?
Oh, so good. Such a great race.
Such a great race. We wanted to do a quick recap of the weekend. It was very eventful. We had a bit of our own race predictions that we wanted to go through before we kind of look through the race. But Micah and Barry, how did your predictions go from just this Friday?
Mine did okay. I don't know how'd yours go.
Well, go for it, Micah, because you kind of nailed it. You were on top of it. Yeah.
Oh man, I had one missing. So I don't think I was able to mention this, but I have this written down. So I have Fernando podium, which I think we kind of talked about. I have a red flag, which did not happen, unfortunately. And of all the races, I really expected that to happen this race.
Yeah.
And then I have a Haas point. Or points point.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that two of those three came true, specifically the Haas point, and we'll talk about that later. But 2 for 3, it's not bad for the weekend.
No, not bad.
I can't believe there wasn't a red flag. That I agree.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. I mean, and overall, it was a fairly uneventful race. Stay for a couple of incidents, but no huge crashes. The two DNFs were mechanically related. A few bumps here and there, and a couple of end plates and nose cones that had to be replaced, but that was it. And last week we talked about maybe the widening of the track would impact some of that. I don't know if that was that was the case, or if it was just everyone had their head screwed on right. But
yeah, it hurt. Couldn't have hurt. What was your predictions? How did they go, Brady?
My predictions were that there would be rivalry, and it was more of a season prediction than the race prediction.
Okay.
But Sergio Perez and Verstappen, that they would be racing and competitiveness between the two of them. And I mean, of course, Verstappen's he's come back from 15th to 2nd.
My goodness.
Epic, absolutely epic. However, with the safety car, and we'll talk about that more as well. But with the safety car and the field being bunched up together, he wasn't able to catch Sergio. And so that was my one prediction, that there would be that racing between Perez and Verstappen. My other prediction was that McLaren would finish towards the back, and unfortunately that is exactly what happened. Yeah. And I feel bad for those guys.
Well, my predictions were, I didn't get a lot. I think I was still on the hype train for Aston and Fernando. I'm going to get that right. In our pre-podcast, I got it wrong again. And in on Friday one, I did as well. But I didn't say where, but I said Aston a podium with Fernando, and that was great. I'm bummed to see Stroll didn't get up there, but that was not, I didn't say one driver or the other.
Right.
And then I predicted early on, I think that the Red Bull would with Max would get it, but that didn't happen. So I actually over the weekend, though, I had like an inkling that Sergio was going to do good here, and I'm bummed I didn't mention that on air, but say la vie.
Yeah. No, it's and all the commentary this week when it was all about how Sergio Perez really excels on road courses, and he's shown again, in mechanical issues for Verstappen aside, because of course he started in 15th because of a mechanical issue on Saturday. Perez held his own. He ran a great race, and really dominated the way that Verstappen usually would in a race like this. So it was fun to watch him drive.
We did see right at the end, I don't know if you caught it, but there was a little bit, one of the most thrilling things of the race wasn't whether someone's going to pass somebody else, it's whether Max is going to get fastest lap on the last lap to take the championship by 1 point from Sergio Perez, who had the fastest lap. And we saw this a little bit over the radio, where Max was asked to keep a certain pace, and he didn't. He wanted to go faster. Of course you're going to go faster. He didn't want to keep a certain pace that the team was telling him to do. And in the cool down room afterwards, after the race finished, Sergio was talking to Max and was like, "Oh, what were they asking you to do?" And they're like, "Oh, to keep this pace." And he's like, "Oh, what were you doing?" He's like, "Oh no, I just went for the fastest lap." And like that one thing means that he is 1 point ahead. And I think that in the mentality of Max, and he says this in the interviews, he's not there to be second place. He's not there to just be second in the championship. Any point.
Yeah, he's going to go for it.
He is going to take the opportunity, whether his team likes it or whether Sergio likes it or not. And I think that's what you were alluding to as well.
So let me ask you guys this. So you noticed at the end of the race, the first and third place pulled up to their respective spots behind their position numbers. Max pulled into the pits. Any thoughts on that?
Outing.
I mean, I've not heard anything else. I don't know if you guys have heard any reports on if he just got confused or if it was a show of displeasure.
I mean, he's done it enough. He knows where to go, and he knew exactly where he was on that racetrack. So for me, thinking like, "Oh, I got confused. I didn't know. Got way." No. He making some sort of statement, or there may have been something wrong with the car. But either way, I would venture to say it was more of like, I'm gonna show my disdain by doing this.
Yeah, and that's what I thought, and it kind of ticks me off because I'm like, I want to respect him as a driver, but that kind of behavior. In fact, there was a shot of his dad, of Jos Verstappen as well, who kind of
completely brushed him off as he was giving everyone a hug.
Exactly. Of Paris. And I'm like, you guys are, it's the second race of the season. So I think that's going to be something to watch. I think,
I think your prediction of this race is a prediction of the season for Red Bull. That this is just doing, and it's going to continue. I remember hearing the onboard radio where Perez was asking about the fastest lap, but also race time. To your point, Micah, and they had told him a number, and then he had asked like, what was Max driving at, and he was like, why are you telling me to drive at this rate if Max is going to do that?
Max is going to do that,
and it's crazy just to think of. This is just the second race, and Max wasn't even. I mean, he was starting from a deficit. Imagine if they were up front together, could have gotten even more spicy. So
right.
I don't think Sergio would have been able to hold it against Max if they were starting. I don't
think so either.
I don't think that's like a I mean, he came up from 15th. By the halfway point, he was in the top 3. And so, and yes, the safety car did help position him and pull the Ferraris down on the grid. But man, oh man, the way he passed Mercedes, the way he passed Lewis, it was like they're not even able to compete at all. And you see that when they're racing, because it's a very different racing style that Mercedes and even Ferrari drivers have with Red Bull, where last year, the year before, they're pushing their elbows out, and now they're not trying to be aggressive because they know that they're not even going to be able to hold their own.
As Max was flying through the field and passing people, as soon as he got the DRS on that straight, because he would wait, and we were talking about like how they shifted that detection zone, but he would wait till the straight, and it was like there was no one who could compete with
even Fernando didn't even try. But you're like, how often does Fernando not try to compete with somebody trying to pass him? I mean, he just was like, whoop, and go right by.
Which is amazing. So all the more the fact that at the end that Perez was able to hold him off. I just like Perez. I'm a big fan. It'll be fun. It'll be fun to see how that unfolds through the rest of the season.
It was exciting not to hear the same Dutch anthem over. Like, it was cool to hear like a new song.
Mike is all hating on the Netherlands.
I'm not hating on the Netherlands. I'm just like, you know what? It's cool to hear something a little different.
I agree.
From what we normally hear.
Wow. And to hear Mexican anthem is it's so cool. It's wonderful. Yeah.
What
So
do you
what
guys
else?
think
Surgery.
about Alonso's 100th career podium and the continuation of Aston
Yeah.
and some
Wait.
dominance here, fellas?
Oh my
So
goodness,
Fernando
man.
Fernando's 100th podium, and then not, and then again.
So right. So he starts the race, right? So this is all comes back to when the way he finishes was affected by the way he started, and he was just a little bit offset on the
Right.
start grid, which we saw from, and there's a lot of parallels with Esteban Ocon in the first race of the season in Bahrain, where the same
Right.
thing. He was offset a little bit, given a penalty, came into the pits. Thankfully, Fernando Alonso came in under a safety car, so that kind of
Right.
negated
Saved
some of
his
the
bacon.
effects of that.
hmm
And the issue is then they touch the car, but the wording says work on the car
Right.
before the 5 seconds ended. And the entire race, nothing, not a peep from the FIA, not a
Right.
peep from stewards, nothing.
Right. No, it was
And
a
then
bummer at the end. It
they
was a bummer.
celebrate,
But
and then he gets pulled back. I don't.
overall, though, Chad, I think it's amazing. I mean, there's so
Yeah.
few drivers who've had this, and they said it was his 100th podium on the 17th anniversary of his
Right.
25th podium. So I'm like, someone.
Which stat man? Somebody's in the background like,
Yeah.
how do we figure out the cool stats for this weekend?
Right.
It's fantastic though. I mean, he's in the top,
so cool.
the top
So
of
cool.
the drivers in the
Yeah.
history.
Well, I mean, you go into a season like this and, you have a big personality. It's so good for the sport to have a
Right.
personality like Alonso. He's a little more feisty than like a Vettel was, but he's a likable guy. He's a great racer.
Mhm.
And it's a great story. So I'm thrilled for him. And more than that, I'm thrilled for Aston Martin. I think to see their green
Yeah.
cars up at the front being competitive, could not have predicted that. I hope they can keep it up throughout the season.
Well, this race was green car up at the front.
Right.
Stroll did
True.
have a DNF, and that
Yeah.
was really unfortunate to see.
But up until the DNF, he was racing well. Like they've got a
Right.
good car. So
Yeah.
Did you,
Yeah,
did
what
you
do you-
guys hear what happened to the car specifically?
did not.
Call.
Um,
I think it was a hydraulic. Was it a hydraulic? I can pull it up.
yeah.
Anyhow,
Not sure. Not sure.
I,
what it is.
it was just it makes me the reason I ask is you just wonder like, are there any issues with like the Mercedes
Right.
engine that we're not aware of that they
Yeah.
had, or is it just some other fluke?
Mhm.
I know Max, his car had, I don't remember, he had that high pitched noise that he was worried about drivetrain or something. So I'm always like keying in right now to see who's having issues and who isn't, which
Sure.
we know, of course.
So they don't know. They still don't know. Aston Martin
Interesting.
says the team is investigating the cause, but there was a reduction in energy recovery. And he drove for a little bit. And in the interview, post-race interview, he actually said that for a few laps, he was losing power. So it wasn't an all of a sudden, but when it did happen, they told him to stop the car immediately.
Right.
And when you are told by your engineer to stop your car on the track, that's when you know
Right.
it's big.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's the whole check engine light, right? Check engine light
Right.
comes on. Don't just ignore that. Something's wrong, especially when you got a car that's worth tens of millions of dollars. So
yeah.
get that sucker parked in, so you can race another weekend. So for Ferrari 6 and 7,
Yeah.
not the weekend they wanted, but felt like they were a little bit more
Something.
competitive. What do you guys think?
I don't think 6 and 7 is competitive for Ferrari. That doesn't
It's better than
se-
last
that
weekend.
Sure, right.
All things-
Something is better than
exactly.
nothing, all things considered, but like that doesn't 6 and 7 doesn't make you a competitive car. That's why I'm
No.
expecting Alpine and
No.
Alfa Romeo
Sure.
and Haas even to fight. And so to have Ferrari in 6 and 7, now they did pit right before the safety car, so it kind of messed up some of their strategy, but still not having enough power to even race.
Yeah.
Charles Leclerc has 6 points in the championship. 6.
So, but
and-
here's the thing, Micah. So Ferrari, Red Bull, and Mercedes are the top dogs, right? They are.
Right.
So with the outlier right now being Aston Martin, and Fernando Alonso, who's just doing a phenomenal job. So if you take Fernando out of that top 3, and out of the top 10, so you still have Ferrari, albeit behind Mercedes, albeit
Sure.
behind Red Bull. Yeah, I think to your point, Chad, like it's better than last week. And,
Right.
I wouldn't count them out. I don't think they got people working on their issues, and it'll be interesting to see, over the next couple of weeks, the kind of
Right.
changes they make as they prep for Australia.
I think, yeah, better than last week. But I mean, I think, Mikey, you're alluding to. I mean, this is not what Ferrari is expecting. This is
No.
not what their fans, the Scuderia, want. Italian, the whole nation.
Right.
They canned Binotto for the slow progression up into the win, to fighting for wins, because he wasn't getting it done. 6th and 7th is not getting it done for
Sure.
Fred Vasseur.
True story.
I mean, so you wonder, like, does he have a timeline on him? Is he got a year?
Yeah.
Do they give him 2 years? I don't think they're going to be real patient. But then I'm like, who else are they going to bring in if he can't do it? Let alone Leclerc sounds angry.
Sure.
He is not happy. I remember one time, I don't remember what it was it was a pit strategy or something, but his race engineers told him something, and he just was like, "Why?
Oh, yeah. No, it was the timing of that message. Yeah.
There's so many multiple moments like that. There was Monaco last year where the pit just went horribly wrong and they double stacked. There was when they pit in Silverstone, they pit Sainz and gave him new tires, and they didn't pit Leclerc. And and so there's so many times where they're just not giving correct strategy. And we saw this a little bit yesterday, but it was more of just an unfortunate strategy, not a bad strategy yesterday, where they were caught up, with cars in front of them that were just a little bit faster than them. And they were quite far away from the cars behind them, but man, it's just really unfortunate. And I really hope that it came down more to the track, and let's say, that didn't really suit the car with the track that well. So I'm really hoping that another track might be suited better for Ferrari.
So let me ask you guys this. This is one I was like, I can't wait to talk about. The safety car in Stroll's DNF. Was that warranted? Was that a fiasco? How did that affect the end of the end of the race? What do you guys think?
Necessary. The car was pulled into like a garage spot. Like, it was pulled into the side. I was expecting it to be in the middle of the road, and then they pull away and he's just like tucked in. And you're just like, what?
Yeah.
Maybe a virtual safety car, but a full safety car.
I was expecting a virtual, just maybe it was tucked out a little bit. They got to make sure. I mean, maybe for like a lap or less. But I agree, a full safety car was unwarranted, and he pulled it way in there. It wasn't out in the track for very long, even where it was.
Yeah.
The FIA, is that Ferrari assistance program or whatever?
Well, it didn't help them this time.
It didn't,
but they're trying.
No.
They sure
are. Well, I think I one of the things I heard is that the GPS signal looked like it was on the track, but I'm like, there are literally hundreds of cameras pointed at that track. Look at the monitor. And
maybe we should send them the multi-view or thing that we found this last week.
Exactly. Well, and for those of you that are listening or watching it, maybe you're familiar with, so when there's an actual safety car, all of the cars get to make up the gap between the car in front of them. So it bunches the whole field up. With the virtual safety car, they maintain their delta. So their distance between, they all just slow down the same amount so that the field doesn't get bunched up. So safety car dramatically impacts the race, and we've seen that in a lot of races where a championship maybe gets lost on the last couple of laps. Right. So I think that was a big miss on the FIA's part. I think it was a great race. I think the real loser this weekend was the FIA. I think they just didn't do a good job and haven't been doing a great job. It would be good to see them tighten up some of their processes.
Even when they say that, like, they're gonna say that after every time that something happens, and then something else is going to happen, and they're going to say, oh, we're going to tighten up our process again, and then something else is going to happen. And like,
Sure.
I really hope that we get to the point where we're actually trusting FAA's decision and like understanding like, oh, like that makes sense. Granted, Alonso was way off of his start. I think that, yeah, that was kind of a penalty. He's way off of his start. But the fact that we have to do this wishy-washy, all the other decisions after the fact are like,
Right.
really? Like,
Yeah.
really?
Well, and when is a rule a rule, and when is a rule like when is there precedent? Are we like in like a courtroom where we're like, well, actually, in 2001 there was this one time when you didn't. It's like, no, it's a rule. What happened in the past? I mean, that's why you got referees, right? That's why it's the person that you're doing that, because human error is human error. But when we're going back and saying, well, they did it in one race, in this race, like, have the rules be the rules. I agree. Mike, he was outside of the box. If you're supposed to be in the box, that's it. That's a penalty. If you're not supposed to touch the car before, the 5-second or 10-second penalty, don't touch the car. If your jack touched it, like, I mean, obviously there are some interpretations times, but I feel like these are not, some of these at least.
What I don't understand is why isn't like the team is the one that does the timer? Why is, if someone's going to serve a penalty, it's like common sense that I don't, at least for me, maybe, where it's like, have a steward down there with a timer or with a light.
They have headphones too.
Right.
Imagine like who in the team is saying, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's go.
That's watching
one alligator, like, 2 alligator.
And so it seems so odd that this is something that's down to the teams to then implement.
And here's the thing, even the crew, I mean, these are not hobbyists. These pit crews are not showing up, on the weekend from their regular job. They get paid a lot of money to travel around the world and to do this, and they do it at an extremely high level. They're all aware of last weekend and Ocon's penalties. They all know. So, I mean, and I agree, Chad. If it is the rule, make it the rule and make it consistent. But I think it's the lack of that consistency. I think the lack of timing to I think they're at the end of the race, like they have a whole room full of people monitoring the race. So like these penalties that come after the fact, we're going to review this later. It just creates more drama, I think, than it's actually needed. And so there's a lot of factors. It's hopefully it improves over the season. But to your point, Micah, this has been an issue with the FIA and with any governing body in sports for a while, and there'll always be something to complain about. But this I think was particularly frustrating in some ways.
I'll tell you what wasn't frustrating, was very wonderful to see. It's Kevin Magnussen passing Yuki Tsunoda and scoring 1 point for Haas in the second race of the season.
You had to throw that in there, right?
Yes, I had to throw that in there. It was great. Okay, granted, the race towards the end was getting so slow that they were focusing on 10th place, just because there wasn't a lot of fighting on the other side of the grid. But come on, Yuki Tsunoda and Kevin Magnussen, that was a really good racing towards the end.
Yeah.
That was beautiful.
It was really good racing. And then you have, right at the end of the race, you have McLaren telling Lando to slow down and let his teammate pass him. And I'm like, oh, is this a sign of things to come for the season as well? That was a bummer. Bump for McLaren. Would love to see them perform better, but yeah.
Well, they did. And the fact, they started this race the same way they started last race, which is, let's replace a wing. He actually starts P9. Incredible qualifying, mind you.
Did really well.
Incredible qualifying. Shows incredible pace throughout the entire qualifying sessions. All of the sessions that. And then, of course, lap 1 gets clipped. He did get a little boxed in, and I was kind of bummed about that. Got boxed in, clipped his wing. And we know that once your wing's clipped on the first lap, you pretty much need to replace it. because it will change and affect your airflow for the rest of the race. Tire
Right.
deg,
Right.
grip will all be affected. And so to see him come in and have to pit, and then only a few laps later, Norris comes in and pits as well. And to see this once wonderful team, even a few years ago, that was fighting for P3 in the standings, race winning in Monza, only a few years ago, to see them now at the bottom is just like,
well, every shot where they cut to Zach Brown, I was like, that looked just painful. He's just not a happy guy right now.
Yeah.
And like Leclerc, I feel bad for Lando because he's competitive. He's a great driver, and it just goes back to, if you don't have a good car under you, you're not going to be winning. You're not going to be scoring points. And it just, it's not going to be a great season for you. But
can we talk about Lewis real quick? Are you guys?
Yeah,
sure. Yeah.
I'm just surprised and I think blown away. I mean, he keeps saying how terrible this car is, but Russell still is getting in front of him and making a better use of that car. I mean, it's not great, obviously. The whole team has said that, but it is very, very interesting just to see Russell still getting in front of Hamilton.
I wonder, because what some of the other news that came out last week was that Hamilton's trainer and him are no longer working together, and she's moved on, and it's significant because she was a presence in the paddock and was always at his side,
7 years.
Yeah, and there was nothing, it seems amicable. It seems like they, but you just kind of wonder what's the shift that's happening. Like, things are moving around Hamilton on the team, in the people that are working with him. His car's not working right. And I think it's less about the car and it's more about his mental state, where his head is at. There's no doubt Russell is hungry to win, and he is, he's going to fight with everything that he has. I think Lewis, and we've talked about this, I think Lewis is kind of on the opposite end of that spectrum. I think he's just kind of biding his time a little bit. I think in the first few races of the season, if he notices that this is not going to be a competitive year, I think it's going to be a little painful to watch him race throughout the whole season.
I'll say, like, Lewis and Angela parting ways was kind of a shock for sure for the grid, for everybody, because she's been with him for 7 years now. So been with him for a while, and so she's his performance coach, physiotherapist, and so a lot goes into what she does, and she's an incredible, and I do want to say, I don't want to put her leaving as a focus on Lewis. I do want to focus, like, I do want to say, like, she for the last 7 years has done an incredible job.
Phenomenal.
She is wonderful and has this reputation now of being an incredible instrumental part in Lewis's championships. And so I do want to know, like, I do want to focus that the fact that, like, Angela was incredible.
Absolutely.
And her leaving is like, it's a show for Lewis, but also, like, I do want to pay respects to, like,
for sure,
incredible things that she's done. And so but it is hard because, well, is there a replacement now? Does Lewis still need her? I would think that this would be the exact moment that Lewis would need someone, because you're not doing well, but I don't know. It's gonna be hard, and to say, like,
Chad, you're the one with the big 44 flag on your wall. I can't see it right now, but it's there. It's there. What's your thought?
No, I think I mean, not to say the wheels are coming off, but I think it's the start of something to be concerned about. So I'll say that. That I think last year was like, okay, new car, new regulations, new team dynamics. Maybe he was, trying new spec stuff. I mean, there's all that kind of controversy, and Russell wasn't. So let's put that one behind. But that still does play with your mind. I mean, you got a championship driver that had a first year of really struggling. That's got to mess with you. Now you come into this year, everybody's excited, new car, new continuation of these regulations, and the car stinks and you're not doing so hot comparatively to your teammate, which obviously, your first competitor is your teammate, and that's who you want to beat and win. So again, that's not happening. Now, the team's also not looking at, and I don't know that they're saying a 1 and 2 as much as they're saying we want to just be competitive. So now you got, the team's not maybe all in on just Hamilton. They're just saying we want to be competitive. So then there's that. And then you got Angela leaving, which is huge because it is your strength and physio, but it's also the mental side. Those are that's your comrade. That's your brother in arms, if you will, that's, out there and walking through things. You need somebody you trust that can walk you through the difficult times. And I'm sure that was a lot of what she did with him, in addition to the strength stuff. So now you got who fills that void. I know he's, I'm sure he has other people around him, but that is a concern for me. So I want to see him do well. I'd love to see him win another championship, but I am concerned. And he's an incredible, champion, and can he make it through? I'm sure, but it is cause for concern for sure.
Yeah. No, we'll have to keep an eye on that. It's my heart aches for him a little bit. I would love, it would have been really cool to see another season of Max and Lewis really going head to head. And of course he wanted that, but like the team just hasn't delivered. But hopefully he can snap out of it and kind of get back on track for the rest of the year. And to your point, Mike, I think Angela she's been incredible, not just for the sport, but specifically for women in the sport. I know last season there was some kind of comment about her carrying his bag, like this chivalry weirdness. And she's like, y'all need to shut up. This is my job. This is what I do. I'm a professional. And I think she's just, she's pretty awesome, and wish her the best of luck with whatever she pursues beyond Formula One. It's going to be an interesting season, guys. I don't know. I'm, it's good racing. Lots of stuff happening with the best of the rest, right? The rest of the pack.
Right.
I don't know.
I'll say, like, for Mercedes, the question then becomes, at what point do they forget about their entire, so we're talking about Lewis, and the car doesn't fit Lewis. We understand that. Russell probably doesn't love the car that much either. Like, we know that they're just making it work. At what point do they just scrap it and move on? Because everybody else has a different car philosophy, and they've managed to create one that's pretty much like Red Bull. Like, everyone's kind of like, oh, this works best. And Mercedes is like, we're going to, knuckle down, and it's, yes, you can pull out a 4-5 finish. Great. But for how long?
Yeah.
How long, And they don't want to be 4-5. They want to be 1-2. At what point do they scrap? Are they introducing changes? Should they introduce changes halfway through the season? Should they just make this season a wash and just focus on next season? Like, these are the questions that people are going to be asking Toto, and have asked Toto and Lewis and the team. And it's like I feel like it would be really demoralizing. You work on a car for months, over a year, and then all of a sudden it comes out and it's bad.
Right.
And everyone's like, when are you gonna throw it in the trash?
Right.
I think they're gonna make it work as much as they want, but like, really, it's not gonna take them where they need to go, which is that championship title, which is that, fighting for pole positions. They're not fighting for pole positions. They're not fighting for a race win. They're not here to be third place.
What I need to do is build my Mercedes for Formula One car that you got me, Mike. Maybe that'll help them along a little bit. They get it all.
Instructions.
Well, they brought back. Is it James Key? Is that who they brought back?
I think so. Yeah.
Somebody that is on in Mercedes world, but they brought him back. I think he wasn't doing that, but to help with the design. And then obviously they've had a lot of people leave Mercedes and get poached from other teams. Right. So you got to just think that, again, all these pieces, these factors are coming in to disrupting what Mercedes had
Sure.
really at the end of the regulations of last, and it's just interesting to see that how really quickly you change a bit of the dynamics,
Right.
and it's hard to keep that up, which was, I think we're very grateful. I'm grateful and lucky to have been able to see that kind of dominance that they had.
Right.
And I don't know that we're going to see that maybe at that level from them for quite some time.
I know, I agree. And I think the thing is that Formula One, and we forget this because there's usually, we focus so much on the driver, but it is a team sport.
Right.
And the team the teams are like 800 people because it's everyone back at the factory. It's all of the engineers that are monitoring all of the systems, both at the track and back home, and if the team loses that mojo, if they lose that camaraderie and that, right, and they get demoralized, the effect of that can be so devastating. We've seen teams like Williams where, just kind of slip because the team wasn't working. And I think for Ferrari's in the same boat. I think it's, you can fire Binotto and say, okay, you're not doing your job, but I'm like, it's the whole group together really coming together and saying, hey, we've got to turn this around. And it's, it's that whole, the team's going to respond to the leader. And you look at Toto, and I think ever since his outburst at the end of the season when Max won his first championship, so a couple of years
21.
ago, it seemed like that was the start of like this slippery slope because his attitude just got really sour, and I think it infected the team. And I I'd love to see that shift. But yeah, that's a hard ship to correct, especially in the middle of a season, especially when you come in with your hopes high and thinking, okay, you're like, it's gonna be different this year, and at least they don't have porpoising, right? That's a good
sure.
No porpoising. So what do you guys think? Wait, next race is in Australia.
Yeah.
Any thoughts about Australia?
First day race of the season.
Yeah.
We've had 2 night races, so
Interesting. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
I love Australia. They made a few changes for the corners last year. I think it's a great course. It's really, really fun. It's really fast. You get really good. If the cars are even, you get really good racing. And it's beautiful. It's one of the beautiful, I mean, all of
it's gorgeous.
Most tracks, most places are beautiful, but Albert Park really does show like
it's a beautiful setting
area. Yeah, absolutely.
So
I'm excited. I'm excited.
Yeah. So we're going from a track, like a designated track, to a manufactured road course, to an actual road course. Because Australia is actually raced on real roads in the community, so that's always interesting. I think it introduces some fun challenges.
I will say, like, a road course is a very broad term because after Australia we go to Baku, and Baku is like 90-degree corners. It's like a downtown street. When you kind of have like a road course is just like it's not a designated track, but like Miami is a road course, but it's in a parking lot, and so I think it's like I feel like the term road course is much broader than it
just has to do how Chad, what do you think?
I'm excited. I like the track. For those of you that are new, they used to start the season off in Australia, and because of COVID, they shifted that. So it kind of just, for me, it reminds me of the start of the season, and I think I get excited just seeing,
I'm the same. I had the same.
Arabian never happened.
No, they're like football. It's preseason, even though the points count. I had the same thought this weekend. I'm like, season doesn't really start till Australia anyway, but
oh my goodness.
that's
so that'll be exciting. And then I think it's just another, why they make us wait another 2 weeks for the race, that always just drives me nuts, but it is what it is. So
So we'll get two
I
weeks,
like
2
maybe
weeks,
some
and then a
others.
month.
I like more races than the latter. So I'm happy with race back to back to back. But that's just me.
Sure, sure. Good
Well,
stuff.
let's hope that Sainz doesn't DNF again, because he DNF'd last year on the first lap, and that was not great. And let's hope Mercedes can be able to pull off, because even with the whole kerfuffle with the FIA and the podium with Alonso, they are tied with Aston Martin for second place. Technically, they're third because of positioning, but they're 38 points each. However, Red Bull is double that, more than double that, which is at 87 points. So I think it's going to be a Red Bull pulls away and no one can catch them. And then we're going to see Aston Martin and Mercedes really duke it out. We're going to have Ferrari coming back for sure. I think Ferrari will come back, but this second place is going to be the championship, or rather going to be actually the most interesting thing to watch throughout the season. Not first place. We know Red Bull's going to win. We know Max and Perez are going to win. Maybe
Right.
there's going to be an Alonso victory, and at that point, I will be, pouring the champagne and celebrating because that's with him, because that's a fantastic thing to see. But I think at the end of the day, I just want good hardcore racing.
Right.
Edge of your seat style stuff. Silverstone 2022, where we were able to watch cars just absolutely shoulder to shoulder go against one another. And we saw a little bit of that in Bahrain. We saw less of that in Saudi Arabia as much as I thought. And I think these next races, these next tracks, I'm just hoping for some of the best racing that we've ever seen.
Cool. Good.
Well, awesome, guys. Well, good recap. What a great, again, another start to the season. And I'm excited for what's ahead. And thank you guys for joining us. Like always, feel free to give us your comments on how the race went. Did you like it? Did you not like it? Did you like any of our comments? If you have any thoughts, we want to hear from you. And always like and subscribe and follow us on Twitter and YouTube and any of your podcast platforms as well. So thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.